welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Alexis Burton. Today we're doing things a little bit different. We're going to do a question and answer session. We have attorney Stephanie Young back in studio. We had such a great response to our last podcast with her. And I also wanted to announce that she is launching her own podcast, the Stephanie Young Law Podcast. So welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So
in the hot seat today,
right,
we got some questions going on.
Yeah. So I did send them to her beforehand, and she was like, "Ooh, those are some good questions." So the first one, if you could make a change to the divorce process, what would it be?
You know, and when I saw that one, and I'll just preface this with like, yes, you did send me these questions, but to be really authentic, it is still the hot seat because I saw them and then was like, yeah, I'll be on your podcast and kind of put them away. So
yeah,
there was no homework done here. So this really is the hot seat in that sense, which I think I think there's value in that for it to be a little bit authentic.
Yeah.
So with that said, okay, so I will say that I have not personally gone through divorce, right? Obviously, you know, I've been the litigator on the counsel side of it, but not on the client side of it. And I think for the viewers, I think that there's probably more value in some different perspective there. Because for me, it's like, well, am I answering it based on what'll get me more money? Like, let's make the process longer.
Right.
I make more money from it, right?
I mean, we do not need a longer process.
Right. So that's why I'm like, oh, I'll probably get booed at that. So let's, and I don't actually feel that way. But so let's kind of, I don't know, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, you know, I've been through divorce one time. I guess, and based on my experience, which really wasn't bad at all, it was amicable.
Yeah. That's different than a lot of people.
Yeah. Yes. So take that with a grain of salt. But just even like processing through our last podcast together, where one of the things that you had said stuck out was that really the judge decides, and I don't know how I feel about that. It feels like that's not fair. Like,
gotcha.
Like, what if that judge was having a bad day? Now, I understand they're supposed to have, you know, all of the things and put their personal life, you know, put their personal life aside. But you know what? Sometimes we just have shit days, and
clients have been on the end of that, right? Well, you know, not my client, no,
right,
but they have. No, I mean, and I've seen it, and it's like, oh, this is a little unhinged. I mean, we're lucky in the circuits that I practice in that we've got, I mean that when I say we've got good judges, and that they really don't do that. They don't allow their days. But you know, regardless, there's definitely some of that. I know in other circuits, and because I've heard nightmares like, you don't want to go in front of this judge or that judge.
Oh, I hear it all the time.
And even then though, right, it's still that aspect of the unknown and that you don't have control over something. It's not like, oh, well, you just get what you get, you know, food on your plate. This is your life. Like, this is literally, I can't stress that enough because I know that's what we talked about. And I stressed on the last podcast episode, that it really is a huge life stage because it is a big deal. Like a divorce is a big deal.
Huge.
And so I get what I understand that in terms of the perspective of why that's not fair. But I guess the lawyer in me turns that two aspects to talk about on that. Turns it on the other side and say, well, what would the alternative be? Like, I hate to be that person, but it's like, if it wasn't up to the judge, then who's it going to be up to? Like, your other spouse will know. That's one-sided. You know, I think it's just going back to like the nerd of like looking at the three branches of government and the judicial branch. I mean, I think that it weighs itself out of, I think that's got a purpose there. But then the other part of, you know, you saying that, I'm like, the other side of that is, but it's almost, and I definitely see this as an attorney, is that it's kind of good to have that, hey, if we can't reach an agreement and we have to go to a final hearing, then this is what's at stake. You risk it to the judge.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so sometimes that can be a really driving force to making both parties, right? And then I'm not, both parties, be more reasonable because the fear of the unknown is real.
Oh no, for sure.
I mean, there's times where I tell my client, like, okay, it's not real. Like with a good attorney, it's not really the unknown, right? I mean, it's unknown to the client, but if you have good counsel, it's not unknown, but it's still a human being. And to put everything, in the hands of a human being, it can be scary.
Oh,
and I get that. So it's kind of like, okay, it's definitely a good tool to use if you feel like your client's being unreasonable. To be able to say,
yeah, that's true. I don't
think that's not gonna fly. Like, you've got, but then you have other people as well that are like, well, I'll just take my chance. I just take my chances. I'll risk it, which is fine. And sometimes very appropriate. And sometimes the advice is I'm giving them risk it because that's not worth it.
Right.
But yeah, so it's kind of roundabout. That's a hard one, and maybe something that the viewers could comment on.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Because I thought that too. I was like, "Ooh, that's a tough one."
It is
for number one. That's a tough one. The next question, which I thought they were all great.
Yeah.
One of our subscribers wanted to know, why aren't we harsher on cheating?
Ooh, the big adultery word. That's the fancy legal word for cheating in the marriage.
It's
adultery.
common, right? Is it? I mean, I hate to say it because I see in therapy it's very common with couples, but
it is. Absolutely. Even so, like, it's definitely common, and in terms of as actually being used as a grounds for divorce. There's 13 grounds of divorce, like actually a named like legal statutory ground for divorce, because it's one of those categories. Right. You can get a divorce in Georgia based on 13 different things, and adultery is one of them. So it's like, yeah, and you can put that in your petition.
It's so funny because I have no idea what mine was. Like, you're saying that I have no clue.
Yeah. Well, and so with that said, and you can definitely put more than one.
Yeah.
And there's also like a lump all. We just don't get along, But adultery is one of them. And what I will say is what I've seen is that there's probably more adultery than there's obviously more adultery than what's been disclosed. Even to me, even to counsel, because it's kind of like, if that's not really the ish, like if they're not really going back and forth about it, then it's kind of like, we're not going to name it. We're just going to say,
set it aside.
I don't care. Yeah. Like I'm over it. We're done.
And I'm going
to put that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is huge. And so going back to the question, your question was, why don't we punish it?
Well, why aren't we harsher on it? Or why isn't the system harsher on cheating?
Yeah.
They don't.
I think that it used to be, I think. And I say, I think, right? I've been litigating almost 10 years. And I would say that as time goes on, it's become, I think it's just like anything. It's kind of like, it just becomes, and I don't want to say the word norm because it's not a norm. It's still a grounds for divorce. And
I always say common. I hate the word normal.
Yeah, right. But and what kind of world do we want to live in when that's normal, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, it's become so common that it's like almost expected. Like, okay,
I mean, I get that.
And so why aren't we harsher? So I think that, it used to be. But I will say too that definitely going back to the normal phrase what an attorney would use is, it depends. But honestly, it does. And it's very fact specific, which is what's great about family law is that all the cases really are fact specific. I know I talked about that last time, but it's true. They are fact specific. But to give a generalized, if you're thinking, okay, how can we be harsher or why aren't we harsher? There are situations in which there are. It just depends how bad it is. Like if you have a case in which you've been married, 20 years and the adultery is just one-sided. So that kind of helps answer the question too. We see it so much on both sides. That's why it's not.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what are you going to do?
Cancels each other out.
It does, though. Yeah. No, it really does.
No, I mean, that makes sense.
It really does. I mean, look, what's the phrase growing up I had is, look at the pot calling the kettle black. Like, what are you going to do? Like, that's definitely not, that does cancel out. And so I think that does help answer the question, why are we not harsher? Because everyone's doing it. Like, which
I hate that, but
not everyone. But yes, it is very common, and they do normally cancel out. And so I will say that when they don't, then the judges see that it's seen, right? Like it is seen, but it's like in terms of if you got let's go back to the example I was saying, the 20-year marriage, and you've got this cheating that's been going on for like 10 years and you had no idea. I think I think the level of the emotional
How can you
damage.
not know? I'm sorry. Like, how do you not know that? Like,
yeah, I mean, I've seen situations like that's where I learned there's no judgment because like work trips.
Yeah. I mean,
you
I'm
really
not
should
not,
be
yeah.
able to trust the person that you're with.
I feel like there's like always I mean, I know this is like kind of a tangent, but there's always a behavior change.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it just, but then again, if it's going on for so long, that just kind of how you act becomes the normal. But with that said, I do see in terms of what I actually see in cases in court is a trend in which where the emotional damage that it does to the non-cheating party ends up kind of increasing the harshness that the judge tends to weigh. Because going back to judges are human.
Yeah.
So they do weigh on that. But I think that it's like, well, what are the damages? And I know it's like non-tangible. It's actually emotional damage, but that's still evidence. So like you can still testify, and that's when it's like, what did that do to you? But it's also the point of like moving forward. Like, what are you going to do? Say you cheated so you don't get anything out of the house that y'all own together. Like you're out $300,000.
Right.
The judges are always looking at, and they have to, what is fair? What is equitable? Which means what is fair?
Yep.
And again, that goes back to a one-time mistake. Is it fair to lose a lot versus, and I do think that the judges are maybe not actively saying that, but I do think that the more emotional damage that the cheating is doing or has done is going to increase the harshness seen. And what does that look like? That'll look like, a different percentage. Instead of like a 50% of you get of the house or the retirement, you might be getting 30% or 40%. So like just seeing what that looks like. As far as the custody goes though, so if you're looking at like, a lot, it's very, very rare that you can tie in how adultery is going to affect getting your visitation rights.
Well, and that makes sense though.
It does.
That's different. Like
it does.
That shouldn't.
The times that it does, let me tell you the times that it does. The times that it does is when it's like, okay, you've got all these mistresses or whatever, or even if it's one, but like, you're still married. And what does that look, if you're exposing the children like to that.
I mean, yes,
then that's
sure.
like, okay, what is your parental judgment there?
Yeah.
But beyond that, no. I mean, it's not related to you as a parent. And I know that can be hard, extremely hard for the non-cheating spouse because I'm like, those are my babies. You should not get to be around them because you make bad life choices. And I get that on an emotional side of things, but that's not the legal argument. Like there's no legal argument for that. And judges aren't going to uphold that.
Right.
So that's that's kind of where I just sit down with my clients and say, that's not, and I don't see that a lot, my clients, they sense that like definitely on the financial side, like, well, they did this. I didn't want this divorce. They caused this. And those are valid arguments that we can make, but it's not going to be like, oh, they get nothing, know, it's just not. And again, it does depend on the case, as far as, and the judge, but it does depend on the factual basis because again, the more emotional the damage is, I would say I've seen that it is harsher.
Good. I mean, for what it's worth. The next one's kind of interesting. I've had several clients struggle with.
I don't remember what the next one.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what?
Surprise! I've had several clients. So it has to do with stay-at-home moms.
Okay. And
they basically, this particular subscriber wanted to know, why aren't stay-at-home moms valued, their value? Because they work, it's just not for money. Because I was a stay-at-home mom for a hot minute.
My mom was.
Hated it. I'm not meant to. I was never meant to be an at-home person.
No, there was a reason. I got my law degree before I was a mom. Yeah, no, I was never going to be that. I wasn't destined for that. But my mom was, and some of my best clients have been.
And mad respect for I couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, like me too.
But why isn't that, or I don't know. Like,
where's the value in that?
Where's
Absolutely.
the value?
Absolutely. And so some of my my goal is always to like empower. I'm big on empowering my clients and connecting with them. And so my stay-at-home parents, I say that because I've also had clients that were stay-at-home dads.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it way more common stay-at-home moms, and just empowering them, especially through if you're looking at divorce. You know, I love that because I think that they're the ones that kind of really, really benefit from the empowerment. Like they really need that. And I love offering that, like that advocacy and advocating for that. And so anyway, so with that said, obviously I've represented countless stay-at-home parents, especially stay-at-home moms. What I see, I think that it's a good mix, and these questions are good, like to talk about the practical application though, because it's like, there's a good emotional application of like stay-at-home mom, like they've done so much. And like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
But what do you want the court to do? And I'm not being mean about that, but it's a real question, because it's like, you know, if you're a stay-at-home mom, what I'm going to be saying to you, and it really does depend, again, it depends, but I can kind of tell you what it depends on. If you've got really young kids, like that would have to go to daycare, so non-school age kids. And let's say that now there are some stay-at-home parents that like have, you know, degrees, and that we're making like significant amount of money in the workforce.
And they can go back.
But if you can't, and it's really like, you know, you're going to be making, you know, you're entering workforce. So like $12 an hour.
Which is crap, and you cannot live off of that.
Gosh, no. But
especially with kids.
That is the reality of what you'd probably be making if you don't have that income.
Right.
I'm sorry, not income. If you don't have that
prior,
work history and any kind of like degrees to kind of bump you up, you're starting from the bottom in the sense. And not the bottom, because that's not minimum wage here in Georgia, but you know, still that low threshold. Then you're weighing of, is it worth going back to work right now, even though you are getting divorced, when the fact that you've also, like, the daycare is going to cost more. So that's a conversation, and the courts recognize that. So that's when I'm like, just get a quote for a daycare. Get a quote, especially because if you got an infant, like if they're under 12 months, the daycare is going to be crazy, and it's going to not be worth anyway. And so I will say that the courts have picked up on that and kind of said, well, you know, for now, that other parent, even though they're stay-at-home mom, that's kind of where you see the alimony kick in, even for shorter marriages. Yeah. Because it's like, we could say, yeah, she has to go to work, but then we're going to turn around and have the dad pay all the daycare costs. So it's like not worth it. And so I will say the courts do look at that.
Yeah.
But if you've got like you've been a stay-at-home mom, like a homemaker, I would say more transition like a homemaker role when you've got school age kids. So like once the kids are actually in school until like 3:00 or something,
right?
Then you kind of turn into more of a homemaker, which is absolutely still all the things. You've got all the errands and keep up with the house, make dinner and clean the house and get the beds ready. And then the kids come home and then it's, you know, full
chaos,
homework and dinner. And so I'm not saying that it slows you down in terms of your duties, but it does make a change because you're not having to work out the daycare costs. Right. So then it's like, well, you should probably be going to part-time work at that point. But there's still going to be that little bit of temporary alimony for the child support, but then also you need a little bit of bump because you're not able to work as much.
Yeah,
and so
for sure.
That is still considered. I mean, that is considered. But in terms of, so I do think that there's this like idea that they're not stay-at-home moms, the courts don't respect it, or just go to work. I don't see that. So in my
it's
own
society thing, like I think a lot. I don't think it's just court. I think people like in general, it's a society. Oh, you're a stay-at-home mom, like
must be nice, right? Right, and like I couldn't imagine something far from the truth.
Oh my gosh!
Because it's like, wait a minute, you have no financial autonomy, really.
They deserve medals.
Yeah, you have no financial autonomy, and and then there are no sick days, literally. Just a lot of that. But anyway, with all that said, I think the courts get like a bad rep on that, but that's not what I see. I actually see the courts very much standing in and saying, we value what you've done. So much so that like, even when it comes to dividing, like say the house, let's say that, you'll have sometimes, like if I represent the mom, we'll be at like a mediation, for example, and you'll have the other spouse, the dad, the husband be like, well, I mean, I always paid the mortgage, so she should get like nothing from the house. And what I will say is that the mediator will quickly be like, if they've been in, our circuits, they'd be like, well, that's not going to fly, but cool. And like, oh, now I see why you want to divorce them. Because they sound horrible, like horrible human beings that don't value you at all. But no, I mean, so that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing very much so, actually, that the courts are saying, okay, that's just like you worked. We're still dividing these assets, based on other things. But as far as like just looking at it from the get-go about 50-50, obviously there's other aspects, but looking at it that way. So I actually would kind of stick up for the court here and saying that I think they are valued, but they're with a preface that it is something that the court is not going to say this is now like your new lifestyle. Like that's not going to be supported.
Right.
That's why when I said a temporary alimony, because it's like, okay, you're getting divorced, which means, again, this is where
get your shit together.
My empowerment comes in that, yes, right now it does make sense. But once your child reaches this age or once they're in, school, you need to start
That's pretty
looking.
fair, I think.
Or as they get older, daycare, like if you're 3-year-old, they're not in school yet, but the daycare isn't as expensive as like an infant. So maybe looking at what that transition looks like and start building up, your resume, so to speak, to re-enter the workforce. So it's definitely not something that's like, well, I've always been a stay-at-home mom and that's what I was going to keep doing. Maybe you're going to have to quickly marry someone else really quickly that has a lot of money. I don't know. I mean, I don't advise that, but in all seriousness, I don't know what the plan on that would be because, the court is not going to make it where everything stays the same in terms of the paychecks are going to keep coming in. I know that seems obvious, but it's not to everybody.
Yeah, I've run into that too. Just even with my clients, we've had several conversations with several different people. Yeah. And one of actually while we're on this topic of single mom or stay-at-home moms, a lot of them are really afraid of the divorce process because they are.
Yeah.
Like we talked about the fear of the unknown.
Oh gosh.
I think stay-at-home moms are like. That's like pure panic mode.
They are. And
in my experience of what I experienced in session.
And that's exactly why I said, because I love to empower my clients. Oh my gosh, I've loved seeing the transformation and empowering because they're also some of the smartest. Like stay-at-home moms can multitask. Oh, they also can get you can be like, okay, you're divorced. And then the next week it's like, whoa, you already organized, all the logins and you already organized,
they're going to be getting
for
back
the next
to you,
few years. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Whoa. And so, I love those clients. I do. I really do. Because I'm like, I know it's so scary right now, but I'm telling you, you've got this. And again, like I said, the courts don't expect you to turn around and become stay-at-home mom and then the next month you're not.
Yeah, super mom.
The courts do support that transition.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and that's why I don't know what makes me think that maybe society is kind of speaking like the courts don't, but in reality they do. And that's why I think they are surprised a little bit when they come to me and they're less scared. When I'm like, no, things are definitely going to change, just like they would for anyone that's getting divorced. But, that's not an overnight thing.
Oh, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, just get a consult. Yeah. I mean, just have your consult. That doesn't mean you're signing for divorce. That just means you're getting your ducks in a row and you're seeing where you're at. If you're scared or fearful, take that piece out. Go talk to somebody and find out what the law.
Anxiety. Don't you see that anxiety and as a clinician in terms of your background? I'm just curious if you support this idea that you see that an informed person is a less anxious person. Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm like, go get your consult.
Yeah.
Take that out.
Yeah.
Take that rumination. That rumination out.
I can probably count on one hand the times that I feel like I've added to someone's anxiety from a consultation. And that's only because they needed it. Because there are some people that are just so far removed from what reality is. But it's very rare, very rare.
Right.
Almost all the time. They feel empowered and no, I'm not saying I took it away the anxiety altogether, but it's definitely oh, okay. Yeah. Things are going to have to change, but not overnight. Okay.
And I don't know how many times I've said, just because you have a thought doesn't make it true.
So I have this thing. That's so funny you said that because, and we did not talk about this beforehand. I say just because someone says something doesn't make it true. I literally I should get a tattoo of that. Literally, that's a mouthful. But for real, because the amount of times that really comes into play when someone's like on the witness stand and my client's sitting next to me, and I just know what that person just said on that stand is going to make my client fuming because I am, and it's not me. And I'm just like, just here's a paper, you doodle. Because, just because someone says it, don't mean it's true. Look, I've got the receipts, and that's what we bring in evidence for that reason. But it is so true. Just because someone says something doesn't mean it's true. And you don't always have to. It depends on the context. Just because they said it doesn't mean it's true. So, like, if you're co-parenting and the other parent's like, oh, guess you've been trying to call all night and, to talk to your kid, and the other parent didn't pick up, and then you get a text at midnight. Guess you didn't care about talking to Jimmy tonight. I mean, it's just an example.
Right.
And but people do this.
Oh, I
it's
hear about it. Yeah.
What reality are they in? I've been trying to call all night, Jessica. There's sometimes, and you have to read the room, that it's not worth it. Just leave it, because just because someone says something doesn't mean it's true, and doesn't mean you have to respond to it, because you can't change someone else's reality.
Well, and from a neuroscience, because I am such a nerd when it comes to neurobiology, literally, our brain cannot differentiate between true and false. If you imagine something deeply, your brain thinks that's true. So imagine rumination, where you're over and over and over and over, and you're beating the horse with the...
Is that because this has definitely not happened to me. When you have a dream about something like silly, like you feel like you called someone, like for real, like you literally dreamed that you called this person, or that you did this task, or maybe someone said something, and then you're like, did that?
You have to think about did that really happen?
You really have to think about it.
Yeah, because your brain cannot differentiate between true and false. Just because you have a thought does not make it true. So I always say with my people with high anxiety, prove it. Literally prove it.
So that correlates with litigation.
The facts. And if you cannot, without a shadow of a doubt, prove it, toss it.
I love
move on.
that, because that's what in terms of but mine's a little bit like it's the same idea. Just because someone said that doesn't mean it's true.
Mine's thinking.
So which is so exactly what our roles are, right? Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, little side note. The next question is kind of interesting as well. This viewer wants to know what role do you think social media has in divorce?
Huge.
Not just social media, like
it really,
internet.
It's really making these trials longer because it's more evidence, right? So that's what it is. I mean, and that's something that
you can bring that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I did not know that.
And I mean, I'm not saying it's like every case. It's not, because not everybody is like super active on social media. But I mean, like I have had cases in which, I mean, literally, I've been on the other side, like the negative side of it, because like I knew it was coming, because I was prepared. I seen it. Like my clients like cheating and like going on these vacations in like Costa Rica with the mistress, and the kids are at home and they don't have any money. And it's like opposing counsel can't wait. And I've seen the pictures because we exchanged discovery. There's not supposed to be trial by surprise, right? Not supposed to be.
Right.
Because we exchanged discovery, we exchanged documents, and I see them in there and I'm like, you don't want to go trial on this. This is bad. Like, this looks real bad. And then, it's up to the client, though. They're like, oh,
I get pictures.
And it's like, of course the lawyer's introducing that. And I do, and I've been on the other end. Especially when it's like when you're making it so obvious. Yeah. It's like workers' comp. Like, you're out jet skiing and you're like, oh, I can't do this. And you're like,
but you got the PI over there taking the pictures.
Right. And it really don't take. But the thing is, too, is social media is so easy to access. It does not take a PI. Like, it's so easy. Oh,
yeah. Now,
and this is like, it's the other side thing. You think you're blocking people. I'm their lawyer. You're not blocking me. Like, you probably don't know. You probably don't know if I go on my paralegal's social media handle, they're not blocked. I'm going on there and finding it. So you can block your ex all you want.
Yeah.
It don't matter. You can make a non-public profile and block your ex. And I might still know your mutual friend. Yeah. Like, you just don't. Or
that's true.
Or
you
and your spouse or ex-spouse have a mutual friend. You forgot on that friends list, and they're hooking up that other spouse, screenshotting everything. I've got so much of that. I've got so much of that. And then you see them and they're like, and it's like, you posted it. Why are you surprised? Oh, you're surprised I saw it. Fun. And
Busted.
So let me tell you what it is though. I think it's actually I think it's great for the legal field. For me and her, because I've got more evidence.
Yeah.
But also, if we're looking at what the goal is justice, right? Even with, I know that's more of like a criminal term of criminal law, is justice served. But still, in the family law realm, if it's the truth. So if we're if it's better enabling us to expose the truth, isn't that great for everybody?
Right.
Like, I'm not inviting this crackhead over the night. And then it's like, but I see that the crackhead's posting selfies of you on their social media. And this is real stories, true stories behind this, real cases. But
awesome.
Wouldn't we want that to come out in court for the best interest of the child? And it's hard to prove stuff like that. It's hard to prove it. So, but if we've got that, that's golden. So I think it's just giving us, but then of course, it's also when my clients have been on the bad end of that as a lawyer, I'm like, doofus, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're making, but again, like the human being side of me is like, hey, this is what, if it's the best interest of the child, this is justice, that sort of thing. That it's, for society, I think it's much better. Sometimes I'm upset about it if I'm on the other side of it, on my cases.
Yeah.
But it's, it's the truth. And I like truth. I do. I do. I think as an ethical human being, as an ethical attorney, it helps me because I don't, I'm not about spewing lies. Spewing what, I'm only given what, a lot of the times I only have the information that I'm provided through the client.
Right.
So I would be up there saying, no, the crackhead was never there. It would be good to have the proof, And so sometimes I think it's good.
Yeah.
But it's something that
definitely
you've got
plays a role.
to be mindful. Like I just said, just like with your, your career, you don't know who's seeing that. So it's again, just like the whole idea, anyone that's posting stuff on social media that they would not scream out through a microphone to everyone they know, you should probably change that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a friend of mine is he's retired now, but he was a teacher for 30 some years, but you never saw him with any like drinks or anything like that.
See, and I couldn't live like that, so that's why I'm not a teacher.
And he would always say, like, we can't put,
I know.
like,
I know.
He's retired now, so I can say this, but it's because of that, because you don't know what.
Well, it's the image, right? It's not even that you can't drink or whatever, but it's just the image of you don't necessarily want a picture of you drinking to come back, to your students.
The parent could see it and whatever, blah, blah, blah.
That's definitely why I could not have gone into that field. I could not be that.
Mine's more because of the kids.
I'm self-employed.
I'm not a kid person. I always say that.
So I don't have to worry about that, the career audit. But honestly, and that's a whole other conversation necessarily about, like, again, even with your minor children, about how young are you allowing them to be on the social media? Because, I'm not saying that like at 16, what you post on social media is coming back and haunt you at your 30 or when you're 30 getting divorced.
Right.
No, but that's just the same topic, right?
Yeah.
That they not necessarily aware at 16 or 15 or 14 or 13 or 12 or whatever, as young as people are allowing other, their kids to get social media. It's like, just be mindful.
Same with phones,
because
though.
Yeah,
those kids shouldn't have phones either.
But yeah. Well, that's other stuff that's.
I'm not going to get on that
good evidence
today.
For trials. Yeah.
Well, there's psychological effects that. Anyway, the last question. Okay, before I ask the question, the question is, why is emotional abuse not considered in divorce? But I need a clarification, and this is just for me personally, because I heard this along the way. Sexual abuse and physical abuse is considered, because I deal with narcissism a lot. Have for a very, very long time in personal life and work. So sexual abuse and physical abuse is abuse. But to the courts, it's to my understanding that psychological abuse isn't as
Doesn't hold the weight.
Doesn't hold the weight. But psychologically, it's actually the worst type of abuse that you can. I mean, it's far worse than sexual or. I mean, in my own experience of being psychologically abused, I would choose physical or sexual over it. And granted, I've been physically abused, but not sexually. So,
yeah, I think the issue comes with like how the court, and this is just my being like trying to be like more practical in terms of and not emotional on it. My observation is more so the issue comes in that whole narcissist, emotional abuse. I think it's abused in itself. And I do not mean that. I do not mean that to say that it doesn't
term
exist.
Alone is the label.
But it's
the
like,
label is
if you
way
come to
overused.
the courts and say I'm physically abused, it's like, well, where's
There's
the
proof.
pictures? But sometimes there's not proof. There are times in which, what do you think that when you're married and you don't think about divorce, you're going to take pictures and the times that person hit you? No.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes people do. It's good when they do because then we can use it. But a lot of times they don't, or they'll call law enforcement so we have like a record. A lot of times we don't. And then it's like, well, I can't really, not to say you can't say it because testimony is still evidence, but it's just not going to hold the weight. And so we could say the same thing about physical abuse. We could say, why isn't it really, why don't you hear me? Why aren't the courts listening? It's really just goes back to because they're the fact finders and they need some testimony is, and I tell my clients this, testimony is evidence. Even if you can't find the receipt, you don't have the tangible evidence, testimony is evidence. But it sort of goes on to that I think that, people have got to really not just throw that term around of a narcissist or just because, okay, you were mad at them or they acted selfish one time.
Oh yeah, no, I get it all the time. I'm constantly correcting people. There's a difference between narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah, and
almost every person on the planet probably has some form of narcissistic tendency.
And that stays in my corner because I'm not someone that I can't say whether I don't know the difference between those two. Because that's not my place. That's, I defer that. But I will say, though, that that's part of the issue why it's like why anyone's wary of anything because people abuse the term.
Yeah.
But with that said, when you really do have it, because you can also really tell when it's there. Because the text, again, the text messages.
Yeah.
The way that person speaks to the other person. Just like, oh, yeah, it's your day. The kid, we're up in North Georgia. Guess you can come get them. Like, that's just like one idea, one aspect of like, wow. Like, yeah
true narcissistic
you're not keeping the
disorder,
child
you can
from
tell.
me, but like you're making it impossible or really difficult to the point of it's not worth it. And so, and definitely in terms of how you verbalize it, like for example, a TPO, so like a temporary protective order, you can get those not just for physical abuse. So, but there's sometimes you can for emotional, but it just depends what it is.
Yeah.
Because are they telling you every day you should probably kill yourself? Because that's something that, the courts I have very much seen react to because that is, in terms of that is recognized a lot and that's enough, and treated just as bad as physical abuse. So it just really depends. But I think to really answer your question is that I think it's because it's been abused more. Like a lot of people don't just say, well, I've been physically abused. And because they almost know that it comes with an expectation to prove it. And with an emotional, I think people are like, well, it's hard to prove. But again, like we said, the more you interact with that person, in those cases, you almost definitely have text message proof of throughout the marriage.
Yes.
And you also those are good cases to bring in. Like, for example, friends, like close friends that while y'all were married, because that's more credible. If you've got like objective, as much as you can get, friends like that were friends with both of you in the marriage, maybe you could bring them in and, I did pick up on this, or I picked up on that, for them to kind of test their testimony to be about what they observed. That also helps. There's definitely, with good counsel, we can definitely find ways to.
And would you bring in, like, if they were in therapy? Would you bring in the therapist?
It just depends. So
Because that's like my biggest fear.
Yeah. Well,
like I'm not gonna lie. Like I
don't
want to ever go to court.
Probably not. And the reason being is because we might get the medical records and do like a certified medical record if the client, like if it would have to be the client that's disclosed it and given permission.
Yeah.
So like you're probably never going to get those.
That.
If it's the other side and you're trying to prove they told their therapist that they were, narcissist and admitted to all this emotional abuse, you're probably never going to get those. That's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. Well, not never, but it's going to be hard to get those. But on the flip side of it, you would have to get the court to because I'm sure that'd be objected to, and that would be a discovery argument for the court to kind of say this is relevant. We need those records. But absolutely, that's something that could become relevant with the records. Like I don't know if you keep notes or not in terms of what you talked about, but if not, or that you just proving that you were in therapy is one thing, which you can do through, like invoices and stuff. Like you pay, you were paid, and
truthfully, as far as notes, nobody will ever see the notes that I write.
And
even if I'm subpoenaed,
but kind of like that's kind of
you'll get a summary,
right? And that's kind of what we assume. Like we know that,
right?
Which is why you're not always getting called into court. But also, so that's part of it. Because it also could be like if we bring you as a witness, like to court, obviously it's not hearsay because there's the exception of like there's a party. So if they're a party to the case, like you can't, if you are the therapist of the child, unless you're determined as an expert witness where hearsay is admissible, you can't come in and say what the child said to you. So it's pointless. But it's a little different when you're talking about the party because that's an exception to where that's allowed.
Right.
Like you can come in and say what the party said to you. But the fear as an attorney on that is, but what else could come out? Yeah. And because like if you're crossed, that if you're a witness, you are going to be open to the other side has the right to a thorough examination, cross-examination. So that means you've opened the door there to things to come in, and I can object and say, but it's like, well, Miss, Attorney Young, you opened the door, you brought her in. And so that's why you don't see that frequently.
That's the part that I'm scared of.
It's just, it would be the attorney, even if the client's wanting it, a good attorney would probably go over the cost benefit analysis, so to speak. And it's normally not worth it. Yeah. The therapist that I typically bring in for trials is the child's therapist that I already know I'll get in as an expert witness so that the hearsay can come in, the child's hearsay. In terms of beyond that, now proving that they went to therapy, because that then goes to, this judge, the emotion. I'm not saying you have to be emotionally abused to go to therapy, but it definitely does tie to the story that, to the kind of the story, so to speak, of the argument that we're making that, look at the timing of when the therapy started once they got out of it. And, and just to kind of, that to me is more impactful because judges aren't stupid. They can connect dots than bringing in the, to open up the door.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need that.
Yeah. So that, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah,
but
no, absolutely.
I mean, in terms of the emotional, it's not that it does not matter, but sometimes it goes to like if it's a divorce. But this is the practical side of it. But because you're getting divorced, what does it matter now? And I don't mean like, and I know that's bad to say, but it's like,
but I get it.
Now, why does it matter? Now, it's definitely times where we have done that to show why there needs to be the use of like co-parenting apps or the use of like, we're not like pick up, drop off at schools instead of like at the house. So the parents aren't having to interact. Cause it's like that person just abuses me or maybe why all communication on email or through one of those apps.
Oh, I've had several.
It's becoming more and more common instead of like over phone calls and that's times to get the judge to order that. We have brought in, that's where it becomes relevant. Yeah. But beyond that, where is it relevant? You've got to gauge that. And I know that's not what clients want to hear. I reiterate, you don't pay me to tell you what you want to hear. I
say that all the time. Like,
you pay me to tell you the truth. Yeah. Sometimes they correspond and a lot of times they don't. So yeah, I think that it's only so much as where it's relevant. Because as an attorney, we're always kind of thinking, okay, but is that where it's the relevancy in there? I take it, I'm like a machine. I take it in, think about it, sort it, is it relevant? And if so, what is it to? And I think law school kind of trains your brain for that. Because
I do the same, just in a different
because like
way.
you said, or if
somebody will say something and I'll be like, oh, that's very impulsive, or that's a very, and I'm clocking their behaviors, and how often does, so yeah, there's categories up here that, if somebody's talking to me, I'm like putting those things like, okay. And I'm asking follow-up questions, and I'm trying to decide, like, is this bipolar disorder, or is this borderline personality? Like, because that's going to ultimately determine how I treat.
Right.
How I come up with a treatment plan. And I'm not even given just a diagnosis. I'm just like in my own head.
So I think kind of in sum on that issue, that's kind of where, like, as the attorney, absolutely there's value in it. For like, maybe like I just said, but it's finding what is the point of introducing that. And a lot of the times, even for the physical abuse, it's like, why are we introducing that? It's not so much to argue that one person gets more money out of the house. It's the protection aspect of, this is why moving forward, I want a no contact order, or this is why. So it's very important that you're looking at the reason why you think it's relevant.
Yeah. I would think for custody.
That's basically. Yeah. Now there is other aspects, like even if you have no minor children together, where there would be like a permanent no contact order. Those would be extreme. That would be very extreme.
Right.
But, maybe that's why, and that's important to you, then okay. If I think we have enough evidence for that. But a lot of times the relevancy, just like for the physical abuse, it's the same relevancy for the emotional abuse. So to say, because in Georgia, you don't really have to, not anymore, you used to, but you really don't have to go into too much detail about like why you want a divorce. You can be like, I just don't really like the way they look anymore. It can be superficial. And you can get out of it. So the courts aren't pushing, and they used to push of like, well, why are you getting divorced? And you had to actually like, if the grounds for the divorce, the judge makes a finding of fact that it's like adultery, then yeah, you really have to prove the adultery. But the fact that you don't get along, you could just say that and it's all encompassing. You don't really have to prove that. You can just allege it and kind of say, yeah, under oath, we don't,
Side note, this just popped into my head. It happens. And I can't remember what state it is. You probably know. Where is it like a mandatory separation? Like I know in Canada.
There's states out there.
So I know in Canada, because that's where I'm from, you have to be legally separated for a whole year.
Yeah,
before
I've heard of
anybody before you can even.
Oh, what a nightmare for a divorce attorney. Oh my gosh.
Before you could even start the divorce, not many people get married in Canada though, because they recognize common law, which we really don't recognize here. So, but
some states
Kentucky?
do, but I don't know. I know it's not far from here
because
I've seen it. It's not here. So, I'm licensed in Georgia, obviously. And so I have heard that. So in Georgia, we have like it's like the bare minimum. You've got 30 days from the time you file the case. So it's not really like a separation phase. It's from the time you file it, like for the case to be open, for as quick as you can finalize it. It's got to be at least 30 days. And the only time that becomes relevant is if it's like an uncontested divorce. Because typically, I know in my uncontesteds, we're getting everything drafted and signed, and then file like the whole agreement, everything.
That was mine was pretty
before we even get a case number. Then we follow up with a case number. We mark the calendar, day 31. We'll send the proposed order to the judge to sign. Not that it gets signed that day, but at least it's ripe for signing. So in Georgia, that's the only kind of pause. Which I guess I'm glad that there is some pause. So if there was no pause, just because you could you get like a drunk tattoo. Like you could get like a drunk divorce. Like, I don't know. But, and there are a limit in Georgia how many times you can get married. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How many times?
I think that you get married 7 times.
All right.
Don't quote me because it could be 8. I'm pretty sure.
If anybody out there has been married more than 4 is really the.
It's definitely 7 or 8. Like it's definitely
4
7 or 8.
Is I think the most I know of anybody.
Well, so I knew someone at 7. So that's why I say
I want to interview them.
7 or 8 because I know they were on 7. So I'm like, did they have one more in them, or if they got divorced, that would be it? I don't know. But there is a tally. So I do think, like you definitely, there needs to be that time.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a one and done kind of girl. I don't.
Well, I mean, it's not really like a.
Again, no, thank you.
It's not really like a relevancy thing in terms of it doesn't apply to most people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew someone with 7.
I think 4. Yeah, I think 4 is the most client and or personal life that I've ever heard of.
Maybe like, okay, if you hire me on 5 consecutive divorces, I could probably work a discount on the last few.
I was just about to say, like, file 4, get 1 half off.
Maybe.
It's a frequent flyer card.
No, that's not happened
7,
a lot.
wow.
But, yeah, but I've seen
that
it.
Just makes me cringe. Like legit. Oof.
But there's no judgment over here.
No, I mean for me personally, but
I know.
It was just emotionally hard. I had to grieve and all of that. Like and the splitting, it's the stuff and the kid and the.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I was gonna say actually, the more that goes on, I'm like maybe I would charge more because then it becomes really confusing. Of like, okay, that was premarital. Which marriage? Are you paying alimony on any of those? Yeah, it would definitely be like okay, what's the looking back on the chronology of that? But yeah, so that would probably be like if Georgia didn't have that waiting period. But I will also say this, that it's also very infrequent. I've had divorces that start as contested and then like, we've dismissed it. That's happened like quite a bit. And that's fine. But like, I've never done like where we sign uncontested papers, file them, we're waiting the 30 days. And they're like, no. Cause that would have to be both parties. Ooh. Because like that both parties would say, never mind. Never mind. Because if I've already got your signature on a settlement agreement, I'm filing a motion to enforce the settlement agreement.
Right.
Because that's a binding contract.
Right. Yeah.
So, maybe going back to question 1, I was trying to like I don't want viewers to be like, she totally diverted question 1. So I'm trying to like kind of sleaze in an answer there.
It's a tough question.
Maybe like a little bit longer, but not a year. Oh my Lord. That I just couldn't imagine. Well, what that looks like. Definitely, you need some court intervention. Because you're not allowed to
date or anything, right? Like, if you're...
Well, I mean, I have a lot of questions about, does that look like...
What does that look like?
Can you get into court for a temporary hearing? Because, like, separated a year, okay, but what are the kids? Where do they go? Who's going to pay what? Like, that's under the assumption that everyone's just going to be, like, figure it out and get along for that year.
And can you actively start dating? I guess, because you're still married, so that would be considered...
Is that adultery? I mean,
there's so many, like,
yeah, I don't know about all that, but that's why, I would not push for that. That would be a hot mess.
Yeah. A year's a long time.
But
the divorce rate's low.
Yeah. What about the suicide rate? No, I'm just kidding.
Right. No. And I think, I truly think in Canada, it's because common law.
Yeah.
Like most people don't, we're in the Bible Belt, so it's a little bit different. It's a whole culture shock for me. It was when I moved here because of that. But, there was no sex before marriage. There's no, all of no living together before you're married. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, at least things have changed in that realm.
Well, yeah.
Hugely.
And I've been living, when I was like 18 and living with a boyfriend. So that's just blew my mind. Like, coming here and like, oh no. And then like hearing like, oh, I've only had sex with one person. Listen, I'm not judging. I think that's great, but I'm always, you gotta drive it before you buy it.
She said that. That wasn't on my question sheet.
I know it wasn't. I'm sorry. I diverted, but I'm like, some of the things that I've experienced here in the South have been really like, that's just different. It's not good or bad. It's just different from what I was raised and what I was exposed to. And I moved here when I was 25. So
no, it's a lot different. England, I think, is very common to Canada in that sense of like just
we're free spirits.
Yeah.
We're free. Anyway, thank you so much. Y'all, please tune in to Stephanie's podcast, Stephanie Young Law Podcast. I think next week you said maybe.
I'll share that with you. For sure,
And I'll put it out there, and like, share, subscribe, do all of the things. Thank you for all of the love, and we will see you next time.